Indiana basketball is in a recruiting battle for four-star small forward Sammy Jackson, who commits on Wednesday. And it's time for Darian DeVries to go get his first victory.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Okay, right now with FanDuel, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Well, lots to get to on today's show. We're going to have a fun segment in the last couple of minutes of today's show, talking about our favorite Indiana football games from last year, a team that made it to the college football playoff, kind of how they got there. Want to hear a lot from you in the YouTube comments. Plus, speaking of football, we said yesterday it was time for another commit, and Curt Cignetti does it again, possibly with the quarterback of the future here in Bloomington. But we begin today's show with basketball because Sammy Jackson, the four-star small forward, a guy we have talked so much about from Philly, PA, he is making his commitment tomorrow on Wednesday, June 25th, and it's down to Indiana, Texas, VCU, and St. Joe's. And this is a real opportunity for Darian DeVries to go and get his first win. I know he's gotten several big names out of the transfer portal, and we're excited for his son Tucker, and we're excited for Lamar Wilkerson, and I do think that it's a victory for him and the staff to have kept Trent Sisley as your lone high school recruit. I think that is a big deal, and I think all of the wins in the transfer portal were really exciting. But this is your first real chance to win on the high school recruiting trail. This is the first one. This is the first kid that's got you in his top 10 or 5 or 4 or 2 that is making a decision where Indiana is a legitimate option. This is your first chance, if you're Darian DeVries, to go and get your first real win on the high school recruiting trail. And I think Indiana is in a really good spot to do so. Sammy Jackson is going to be committing. Again, that's going to be tomorrow on Wednesday. He's 6'7", over 200 pounds. He plays as a small forward. I legitimately think that depending on what system he goes in, and for Indiana in particular, I think that he can be a 2, a 3, or maybe even a 4 at times if needed. I think he just has the skill set to make all of that happen, okay? He's ranked 68 in the 247 recruiting ranking, so a top 70 player in the class of 2026. He's a 4-star. He really does have all of the intangibles that will run well at Indiana because he plays some of that run and gun style of basketball, gets up and down the floor. He always wants it in his hands, but he's willing to make the extra pass to his teammates. And I think that's why Indiana could benefit his game so much, especially this new system under Darian DeVries and his staff. I think we're going to see that on the floor this year, and he will have a chance to see that, as will other recruits across the country as well. I think Sammy Jackson plays to his size. I think he's got a really good shooting stroke from the outside and from the mid-range. He loves the catch and shoot, right? He loves when somebody dribble drives, penetrates, kicks it out to him. He loves a catch and shoot in transition from the three-point line. He can also pull up from the elbow, 18 feet on the baseline, and he can get to the rack, and he's got some finesse around the rim. One thing about his jumper, though, I noticed it's a little slow. It's almost like he's charging it up, right? When he catches and brings it to the belly button area, it's almost like he charges it up and then lets it go. And the flick of the wrist is really nice. He's got a nice stroke. And I didn't notice that on all of them, but a tendency to kind of let that thing load up just a little bit before bringing it up and letting it fly. That's fine in high school, but unfortunately in the Big Ten, these dudes are too big and too fast to get out there and they'll swat it away. I think that's something they will work out of him in the college game. Just something that I kind of noticed when breaking down some more of his film. And he's also, again, 6'7", 200, so he can play down low in the painted area. He's more of a spot post-up man. And what I mean by that is he's not going to go when you're bringing the ball down the floor and go park himself on the low block, put his rear end into somebody and put his hand in the air and say, hey, feed me the basketball. That's not really what he's going to do, and catch it and then bump you and bump you and bump you until you're under the basket. He turns around and lays it in. Not really what Sammy Jackson does. He's more of, hey, there's a space, there's an open gap in the lane right here. I'm going to park myself right here next to this. I'm going to park myself in this spot. And hopefully my teammates find me. When they do, then I'll give one shove and I'll turn around and lay it in or float it away or whatever, right? That's kind of what Sammy Jackson does. More of a find the gap type of guy rather than just your traditional post-up man. But when you're a traditional three, that's not really what you're asked to do, right? You're not asked to go down there and post up like crazy. It's find the hole, find the gap, get the basketball, and make the right decision. If you can't tell, I really like Sammy Jackson, and I think Indiana is in a really, really good spot with him. He's made visits to all 4 of his places, including Texas on Monday. He was there on Monday, and look, I can't beat around it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try and stretch this out. That's not a good sign for Indiana. The fact that he's making his decision on Wednesday and he went to a visit at Texas on Monday, they have the last say. They have the last chance to make a pitch, to make an in-person presentation, to sell him on the future in Austin. And as we've told you, he has a great, Sammy Jackson that is, has a great relationship with Sean Miller and that entire coaching staff. They were recruiting him heavily at Xavier before they took the Texas job. And Sammy Jackson has been quoted as saying that they have carried that down to Texas, which is a better basketball program than Xavier. I think it has the potential to be a better basketball program than Xavier. It's not right now, but they've got all the money in the world. And Sean Miller's a great coach. So I do think it's an uphill battle for Indiana, but I think we're right there. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity, would just build so much momentum if you are Darian DeVries and this staff, if you are able to go and get Sammy Jackson, your first commit in the class of 2026. And you know what it would bring up? It would cause the domino effect. It would allow you to say, look, we've got one in the bag. Let's go get some more. Then you can start building around Sammy Jackson. You can do that with the Latrell Almonds of the world. You can do that with the Darren Rippies of the world, right? A high-ranked point guard, top 20 player in the country. You can do that and build around Sammy Jackson, who I think is a really good player. Potential is through the roof, and he has a chance to be your first commit of this cycle, of this era of Darian DeVries. That commitment comes on Wednesday, on June 25th, and it's down to Indiana and Texas. VCU and St. Joe's are in there, but I'm very confident that it's down to the Longhorns and to the Hoosiers. Can Indiana pull it off? Can Darian DeVries make this happen? If you do, it's going to be awesome. But I will say this. If it does not happen, it's not the end of the world. And we are not allowed as a fan base to lose our minds and go back to what we've done in the past, which is just go off the rails. It will be okay. But I think Indiana is right there. I literally think it's a flip of a coin. And I do think it comes down to whether they were able to make him flip on that visit to Texas or not. But you have a real opportunity, if you're Indiana, to get a top 70 player, ranked 68th in the class, and the 4-star small forward at Sammy Jackson. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we're going to flip over to football because Curt Cignetti may have just found his quarterback of the future. We'll talk about who, we'll talk about where, and we'll talk about why right after this here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about the baseball under the lights, the golf on the green, or the high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game whether your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. All right, look, FanDuel's the best way to be involved this summer with all Major League Baseball games. You've got You've got WNBA going on right now. You've got another golf tournament coming up this weekend. There's always soccer happening across the world. And so, as it says, why not? Why not make it a little bit more exciting? Why not have a little extra stake on it, right? And you can do that right now with FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit fanduel.com right now to get started. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And reminder, we're going to be talking about our favorite Indiana football games from last year as the Hoosiers made a run to the college football playoff. Just a fun segment here on the Tuesday show. But we've got to talk more recruiting, and we get to talk more recruiting because Kurt Cignetti and the staff are on a generational run. I'm not joking. I've never seen a coaching staff, a football program get this many recruits, this many commits in this short amount of time at a place like Indiana. We're literally on an average of every 2 days, every other day, Indiana's picking up a verbal commit. And you do so with a quarterback from California who I think can absolutely be the future of this Indiana football program. You pick up a commitment from quarterback from California, Cash Herrera. Okay. He's a 3-star quarterback. He's 6'3", 205 pounds. He is a really talented player. Had offers from several other big-time schools. He had offers from UCLA, Arizona. He decommitted from Iowa a while back, okay? He was going to play Power 4 football somewhere, and Indiana swooped in, made this happen, and picked up Cash Herrera. Awesome name, by the way. I mean, we can go ahead and just start thinking of the puns, right? Cash money when he throws a touchdown pass. It's going to happen. I'm not claiming it because I'm not the first one to say it, but it's going to happen, and just be ready for that, okay? As I said, 6'3", 200 pounds, a 3-star quarterback. He plays at the Bishop School out in California, and another state added to your recruiting class rankings if you are Indiana, which is still floating around the top 25. When I was doing all of my prep and everything, 247 had it at 27, but there's so many commits happening right now that it's literally impossible to keep up with where you are in the recruiting rankings. Top 30 is safe to say right now for Indiana, which is really where we want to be in Cignetti's first real cycle following a trip to the college football playoff. But here's what you need to know about Cash Herrera. Okay. As I said, he decommitted from Iowa a while back and was looking around and trying to figure out where he wanted to go. Indiana swoops in, Indiana makes an offer, he takes a visit, and he commits just like that, which is a pretty common story, right? For most kids that decide to come to Indiana. And some of you will hear 3-star quarterback and kind of scrunch your nose, kind of, snarl a little bit and be like, well, that's the best we could do. This kid's really, really good. I encourage you to turn on the film of this kid, because I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country who is being not overlooked, but I think he is underrated and underranked, okay? He's considered the 31st best quarterback in the country, threw for over 2,000 yards a year ago, 24 touchdowns in the air, also ran for 8 touchdowns as a junior out there in California. We'll get to see what he does as a senior this year out there, but he, again, threw for over 2,000 yards and 24 touchdowns and ran for another 8 touchdowns a year ago. Hard to argue with that for a guy that's 6'3", 200 pounds and can throw it and can run it and is willing to take a hit to do so. That's the kind of dude that I want on my football team. And some of you may be asking, well, what about Luke Fahey? What happened to him? We just talked to Brian Smith about him a few days ago. What happened there? This is replacing Luke Fahey. This is in replacement of that. This is in response to that. That is not going to happen. And I think Indiana realized that, and they said, we need to go a different direction. We need to have a plan A, B, C, and Z. And that's exactly what they did. Not saying this is plan Z by any means. I think Cash Herrera is a really, really good quarterback. And I think he could be the quarterback of the future. More on that in just a moment. But the Luke Fahey thing just wasn't in the cards at the time. It had gone a different direction. Indiana understood that. And so then they went to their next plan. They went to the next step, which was Cash Herrera. And there's no problem with that. That's how recruiting works, man. The fact that this staff isn't just saying, well, this is who we want, and then we want this guy at this position and this guy at this position. Okay, let's go get him and see what happens. And if we don't get him, then shucky darns, oh well. That's not what they're doing. They're saying, all right, here we go. We got 5 quarterbacks in the high school recruiting class that we want to go after. Let's go after them all. Let's strategically do it, and let's see which one we can get. Okay, we want these 7 running backs. You know what I'm saying? Like, this staff has proven that they operate this way. And it's so refreshing. It's strategic. It's really, really smart. It's somewhat basic, you could say, but Indiana hasn't been burned yet, I don't think. I think Indiana is doing it the right way. And when you land a kid like Cash Herrera, you are excited for it. And you should be excited for it because turn on the film, dude. This guy's got it all. He's got an incredible arm. So many of his throws are on the run. Doesn't look like his offensive line is the best out there at his school in California. So he typically in his highlights is on the run quite a bit. But man, when he rears back and throws the sucker, I mean, it just travels a mile, and he can throw it on a string. He can just launch it in the air. I mean, he really has an incredible arm. And again, he seems to be on the run quite a bit. He escapes the pocket, escapes pressure really, really well, whether it's collapsing on him from behind, whether it's coming from the sides or just straight at him. He can get away from what appears to be just about anything and then still make plays with his arm. He can extend plays with his legs. He's somebody you can rely on in the red zone to pick you up a late first down or get to the goal line and score you a touchdown. So I really, really like that from him. And I think he's just your typical Curt Cignetti, Shanahan quarterback. He fits what these guys are looking for. I wrote down on my notes right here. I wrote smart, quick, and accurate. Because I think that's what he is. I think that's what Cash Herrera is going to bring to you. I think he's going to be really, really smart. I think his football IQ is there. I think he makes good decisions. I think he's quick on his feet. He can get out of the pocket. He can escape trouble and make a good decision quickly. And then he's accurate. He throws the football very, very well. He's smart, he's quick, and he's accurate. He throws it on deep balls. He throws it in post and corner routes. He throws it on out routes. He throws it on across the middle. He throws it anywhere. And he's just, boom, right there on the numbers. And I think that's what Cash Herrera is bringing to you. And I think that's what Indiana wants right on this offense for football. Smart, quick, and accurate. Those are the 3 words I wrote down when describing Cash Herrera. If you want a comparison when I'm watching his film, he reminds me of a quarterback in the NFL that's a young quarterback that's starting for the Denver Broncos. Reminds me of Bo Nix. Reminds me of Bo Nix when he was playing in Oregon, when he was playing out there in Eugene, when he almost won a Heisman Trophy. And then it reminds me of how he kind of plays in Denver. Now, I think he's become more of a pocket passer in the NFL, which is what they want. But that's what Cash Herrera reminds me of, is Eugene Bo Nix and young Denver Broncos Bo Nix. So if you want to kind of have a mental comparison, that's what I think Cash Herrera is. And I'm excited to see him become an Indiana Hoosier. I think he is your quarterback of the future because you look at what's on this roster and what could be here moving forward, right? You have Jacob Bell, who's a freshman this year. You also have Alberto Mendoza, who's the younger brother of Fernando Mendoza. He's got a redshirt this year. So you have those 2 guys, but you bring in Cash Herrera. Jacob Bell, believe he was, oh goodness, he was like 80th or something in his recruiting class in terms of his quarterback ranking, which is still really good. But now you bring in Cash Herrera as a top, he was ranked 31st as a quarterback, where, hey, by the way, Luke Fahey was ranked 30th. So you're not just settling for anything here if you're Indiana. But I think this kid has a chance to be a superstar, and he's going to come in and he's going to compete. We know that about Indiana. You don't walk in and get a starting job. You have to earn it. And I think That is what you're getting with Cash Herrera. And I'm excited, man. He is now another recruit commit for this class. He just continues, Curt Cignetti just continues to add dudes to the list. I'll give you the updated number. As of right now, Indiana's 27th in the recruiting rankings. That's with 19 verbal commits for the class of 2026. And the latest one is the quarterback from California in Cash Herrera. All right, coming up in our final segment of Locked On Hoosiers, going to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of flashback here. Our favorite games from a year ago for Indiana football as they make their run to the college football playoff. We'll have some fun and talk about that in our final segment right after this here on Locked On Hoosiers. All right, final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. And if you are listening on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or wherever your podcasting platforms are, thank you so much for doing that. And I just ask that you have your notifications turned on and that you follow us in there so that way you never miss a new episode. And then send this to somebody that has never listened to the show before. Send it to them, copy the link, text it their way. Just say, hey, take a listen. If they're an Indiana fan, they're a Hoosiers fan, they need to be right here listening to Locked On Hoosiers. So do that for me on the audio side. And then for those of you on the video side, on YouTube, the three-step process, the three-step drill, you know how it is. Hit that thumbs up and like the video. Helps us out, spreads it around, helps more people find it on YouTube. Also, drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments down below. Your prediction on Sammy Jackson. Does he commit to the Hoosiers? Or does Darian DeVries start 0-1 and lose him to a different school? Let me know down there. Plus, your excitement about Cash Herrera, just the quarterbacks in the recruiting class as a whole for Indiana. And then I do want to hear from you on your favorite game from last year on this Indiana football team as they made their way to the college football playoffs. So leave all of that down in the YouTube comments. And then if you have not already, subscribe to the channel. All of that helps us out. So thank you very, very much. All right, final segment on the show. As I said, we're going to talk a little flashback here of the football season from a year ago. And I thought this would be a little fun to just kind of reminisce, right? Just kind of look back on what the schedule was last year and pick out some of my favorite games from Indiana's magical, historical, greatest season of all time. One that saw this team win more games than it's ever won before, make it to its first ever legitimate postseason event, right? Make it to the college football playoff and really turn some heads across the country about what Indiana football could be under Curt Cignetti. And you start looking through this schedule and we didn't really know what to expect, right? You kind of have to take a step back and think, okay, well, what were we thinking when Curt Cignetti took over? What were we thinking when the football season began? There wasn't a whole lot of excitement. There was a little bit more than usual just because of a new coach and some new players. And we knew Curt Cignetti was a good coach and had won everywhere he'd been, but we didn't really know what to expect, right? And so you step in against Florida International, you win at 31-7. All right, that's fine, cool. It's like, all right, good job. All right, we want to know. That's a good start. Hey, we haven't always beat teams like this before, so that's cool. We're excited. Then you play Western Illinois in week 2 of the season. And by no means do I think Western Illinois is good. They're actually not. They were, I think, historically or statistically one of the worst teams in the country. But you drop 77 points on their head and you only give up 3. You beat them 77-3. And we were like, okay. That was kind of fun. We don't normally do that around here. That was kind of fun. Let's go do it again. Then you start working in to your Big Ten schedule. And I've been asked this question before several times about when they say, Jacob, when did you know? When did you know that this team was different? This team was special. This team was going to do something, not necessarily make it to the college football playoff, but when did you know that this team was different? And my initial answer was the first game in Big Ten play when this team went out to UCLA, went out to the Rose Bowl and took on the Bruins. I had no confidence in that game. I said, it's going to be really tough for Indiana to go on the road and beat UCLA. I didn't think UCLA was all that good, and it turns out they weren't. But for Indiana to go out there and just absolutely handle business, right? You go to UCLA and you just smack them around 42-13. It was close early. Indiana took a lead and never looked back. I mean, the Hoosiers dominated UCLA at night in the Rose Bowl. And at that point, it was like, oh, okay, this team's actually kind of good. Maybe we can win some games. Heck, maybe we're halfway to a bowl game, man. Let's see if we can keep this going. And then you played Charlotte, right? Your last non-conference game. It was like, all right, cool. But then I think the key game that really told us, and a lot of people around the country, that Indiana was legit was when you played Maryland. I think that's step number 2. I think the Maryland game was a lot of fun when you beat them 42-28. You open it up late and just absolutely beat them and send them packing. That was the second instance where I was like, all right, here we go. This team is good. And we knew that we were better than those teams, but you could start to see it in terms of talent. Curtis Rourke and your offensive line and your defense. Like everything was starting to kind of flourish. And you were like, all right, this team's actually got some serious talent. You beat up on Northwestern like you did 41-24. Not a whole lot of memories there. Just whatever. But this is the game. This is the game that everybody across the country took notice of Indiana and said, okay, that team is legit. That team is actually good. Are they Ohio State good? No, but that team is something special. And this has to be my favorite game from last year. It's the Nebraska game. It's when you host Nebraska and you absolutely destroy the Cornhuskers. You just take them out 56-7. That's when the entire country, because remember that Nebraska offense is super good and their defense is going to just slow Indiana down and they're not going to know what hit them. This is big boy football. Okay. Okay. Indiana said, bring it on, Nebraska, and just smacked them around for 4 quarters and absolutely embarrassed that football team. You beat Washington 31-17 in a game that was ugly, man. God, it was ugly, but you got it done. Then you go to Michigan State. Unfortunately, that team just wasn't all that good. Still a tough road game, though. Indiana blows them out of the water 47-10. You continue on. Michigan was awesome, too. I mean, what an incredible game that this was. It was ugly. It was slow. It was low scoring. And it was down to the wire, man. It took some late game heroics for Indiana to figure this thing out. But you beat Michigan. And I don't care that they were down a year ago. Indiana doesn't beat Michigan in football. Just doesn't really happen. But you did a year ago and beat them 20-15. Obviously, the Ohio State game was a tough pill to swallow. You blow Purdue's brakes off. Always love doing that. That's got to rank up there 66-0. And then the game against Notre Dame in the college football playoffs. So my favorite ones are Nebraska, and then Michigan, and then, of course, Purdue. Those are my 3 favorite from a year ago. The Nebraska game was the one that everybody took notice of. Maryland's the one that I started to really say, okay, this team is good. Beating Michigan was such a big deal for this program, and then, obviously, we love to beat Purdue. So those are my favorite games from a year ago, but I'm going to hear from you. Drop your comments down on the YouTube channel or on this YouTube video. Hit us up on social media at Locked On Hoosiers on X. That's the best way to get to us. Comment and let us know your favorite games from a year ago. We'll do some more of this type of stuff throughout the summer, just fun conversations. But man, hopefully we can build some more of those memories this year and try to make another run at the college football playoff in 2025 and 2026. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here. I cannot stress that enough, how important it is to me that you're here every single day, even in the month of June, when some people say it's the off season, but we don't consider it that way. So lots of things happening with recruiting, the decision for Sammy Jackson tomorrow, official visitors on campus as well. So we will be back tomorrow. Okay, Hoosier fans. So until next time, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.